Hello, my name is Yahaira Valadez and I am one of the group members of Group B. I will start off by answering the question, what is metacognition? Metacognition is the awareness of one's own learning and is often referred to as thinking about thinking. Metacognition is at the root of all learning. Metacognition is often seen as a cycle, with planning, monitoring, and evaluating being part of it, all putting it together by reflection. If you look at this image right here, we have the various processes that we have: assess, evaluate, plan, apply, and reflect. Metacognition is knowledge that includes knowledge about oneself as a learner and the factors that might impact performance, knowledge about strategies, and knowledge about when and why to use those strategies. Through practices of metacognition, it is helpful for both students and teachers to become aware of their strengths and their weaknesses. For students, this helps them become better learners, better writers, better readers, and better test takers. It also helps with the process of becoming a better group member, being able to work with others and understanding what is working and what is not. Metacognition is not necessarily about asking ourselves what needs to be learned. Instead, we have to stop and ask, how can I learn it best? Like in any aspect in education, we must keep in mind that every student is different. According to our textbook, people differ in the level at which they can apply metacognitive skills. Younger children struggle more in applying these strategies. They might simply not be aware of the purpose of the lesson, to which their goal is to just complete it. In the next sections, we will talk about metacognition for both teachers and students more in detail.
Hi everyone, my name is Brittany Salinas. I will be going over the metacognition for teachers section of our chapter. As we know, we all want to be the best teachers we can be for our students. And at the end of each day or at the end of each lesson, we should take a step back and think to ourselves, how can I be a better teacher? How can I, make learning more efficient for my students? Is there any changes that need to be made to either my own practices or the content at which the students are learning? There are 3 steps that teachers should follow on the daily for all their lessons, and that is planning, monitoring, and evaluating. During the planning stage, this is where teachers would normally, plan their lessons out, make sure that the lesson is aligned with the learning goals, and, make sure that the work that the students will be doing will assess the students' knowledge. During the planning stage also, this is where pre-assessments can be introduced. And with pre-assessments, it's usually just to see what the students already know and what they are confused about, so that way we can spend a little more time focusing on that section during the lesson. During the monitoring stage, the teacher will, administer the lesson, the content, the assignments, all of that, and observe the students participating and determining whether or not something works or something doesn't work. And also during this time, teachers should be administering different learning styles that fit every single student. Because as we know, students do not all learn the same. What may work for one student may not work for another. And so by providing all the different types of learning styles, students can find what works best for them, and teachers can also find what works best for their students. And this is very important, because if we do not observe our students, we do not get to know our students and know what works best for them, we cannot make changes in order to adjust their learning to best fit their needs. And at the end of the day, the students' growth is what is most important. And then finally, during the evaluating stage, the teachers will evaluate whether or not the students learn during their lesson. One of the better strategies for evaluating the students' knowledge are exit tickets, which is something like they'll hand out a piece of paper and ask the students to write down 3 things they learned from the lesson and 3 things they are still confused about. The teacher will pick them up, go over them, and determine where the students are still struggling, so that way they may incorporate more of that in the lesson the next day. And this is where most of the self-reflecting comes into play. Teachers have to take a step back, as I said, and not only evaluate the students, but evaluate themselves. Evaluate the strategies and the learning goals and the teaching methods that they are providing the students with, and determining what works and what doesn't work. These adjustments can change the game. If you do not change what is not working, the students will never fully learn and grow, and the teacher will never grow themselves. And at the end of the day, everybody's learning, everybody's growing, and as teachers and students, we learn and grow together.
Hi, my name is Samantha, and our group decided to work on metacognition for the topic of our group project. So prior to this class, when it came to metacognition, I was familiar with it, but not in the sense of applying it in the classroom. So I think one advantage that I have is being an IB teacher. We learn a lot about ATTs and ATLs. So I recently did a training on ATLs, which is approaches to learning, and that really ties in with the concept of metacognition. It teaches us a lot of the learning skills that students have to learn to do, so that they know what type of learner they are. And so I think because the two concepts are very much connected, I already kind of had attempted to bring this into the classroom. I just wasn't sure how to do it. I knew what my intentions were, and I knew that I wanted to bring it in, but I wasn't as clear as and confident as I am now in taking this course. This course, I think, has given me the language that I need to be very direct in what it is that I'm trying to teach them, the approaches, the different types of knowledge, the different types of skills that I'm trying to teach them, and why. So I think the one way that I brought this in, I think, is something that I would continue to do, but definitely being a little bit more intentional with it. So in order to teach the students about metacognition, what I did was, during the first semester, every time that we took on a new activity that was going to be repeated a lot in my classroom. So for example, note taking, the activity that I did with them was I told them straight from the beginning, you can take your notes however you'd like, and then 5 minutes into the lesson I would stop everybody, and I would ask them to stop and turn and talk with their partner, not about the notes that they took, but about the process that they decided to take. So what was their approach? And so I would call out, during those 5 minutes when they were working, I would take observation notes, and then afterwards I would share, I saw, some people took out highlighters, some people made a line down the middle, some people started bubbling topics or making mind maps. And so in those turn-in talks, what they really had to do was talk about why they decided to take the notes the way that they did. And then I would ask them questions, did you and your partner take the same approach, what was different? Why did you take this approach? Where did you learn this approach from? And I think the biggest question that really had them reflect and open their eyes was, I asked them, do you take your notes this way because it's effective for you, or because you were told to do it this way? And so I think that big question made a lot of them realize that they don't know why they do a lot of the things in the classroom, and they've never been purposeful about it or stopped to reflect it. And so I think that was a great way to introduce the concept of metacognition. But again, I kind of lacked the language before, and so I was just constantly telling them we need to be reflective, whereas now I'm teaching them this is a skill, this is metacognition, and this is what you need to do in order to be better at it, and how you can apply it as a lifelong learner and that kind of stuff. So I've definitely seen the benefits of it in my classroom, even with the kind of vague introductions that I had at the beginning of the semester before this course. I think it's allowed my students to be a lot more open-minded and not really afraid to try new things in the classroom, because they're just they know that the intention is to figure out if it works for them or if it doesn't. And so I think that's kind of helped them not only be purposeful about how they do things in the class, but kind of take on new ideas with the goal of figuring out, is this something that would benefit them as learners or not. So I think it's definitely helped, and I've seen a difference in the culture that it's created in my classroom.